Hello, hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. It's Benita Lee here. We are on my live um, show. It used to be called Live and Learn on Tuesdays, but there's been a problem with people pronouncing it wrong. So it was Live and Learn when it's actually to replace Lunch and Learns. And of course, in Lunch and Learns, you get to learn from like multitudes of disciplines. Today, I have a really fun guest. I just heard his podcast that he did with Kelly Paxton, the pink collar crime expert. If you haven't listened to that podcast, you need to. It's hilarious, it's fun, and he's a I can't remember what she calls it. A great dude in crime or fraud. So yeah, you've had a busy day. I don't know if you guys recorded today. Probably not, because Kelly does do editing, unlike myself. This is a live show, so there are no edits here. It's improv. Mark Anderson has also appeared on Friday Fraudster. Robert Berry is here, and he's saying he is the funniest. If you haven't watched Friday Fraudster, that is every Friday with Joe, Rob, and Kelly. It's all a community here. It's the auditor fraud community. And for Friday Fraudsters, you actually get CPE for watching. So, follow Rob and Kelly and Joe. Watch Friday Fraudster. Mark has actually been a guest host on Friday Fraudster. So that's fun. It's a like Rob says, it's edutainment. You get educated, you learn, you get points for continuing ed, and you get entertained. Hello, Mark.
How are you?
No pressure.
I used to be on Friday Fraudster, but I think I overstayed my welcome, and Robert threw me off. And Robert just said, "Yeah, the Friday Fraudster, it's not a how-to on how to commit fraud," which is a riot, because I used to teach terrorism in college, and they said, "What do you teach how to do terrorism?" No, that's not the gig. We're trying to stop some of this stuff, right, Robert? Get this stuff stopped.
It's not a how-to.
Not
That's
a how-to.
right. Well, it's funny because I'm going to the fraud retreat. So
excellent.
That
should be awesome.
Yeah, that's the same bunch.
Right.
In it's at the Gaylord Resort in just by the airport near Denver, Colorado. And it's going to be a fraud retreat with more learning, more of these spectacular people that you see on Friday Fraudsters, on Kelly and Rob's podcasts and shows. We got Shri here. We got Rob here. We got Peter here. Thank you all for coming. This one is going to be a fun one. I kid you not. Well,
so Rob's a gardener now. He's a bud nipper.
That's right. He's a bud nipper. Yeah, have you seen Audit Bites? That's Rob's new show. And I'm sure you did not get kicked off. As I recall, Joe was on vacation and they needed you.
I like my answer. It's better.
You like your response.
Yeah.
It incriminates Rob.
Oh, no. He's got good judgment.
Oh, right. I see.
Actually, he was a bud nipper. He was getting rid of problems before they happened.
I see. I see. Uh, Elisa del Palacio from Argentina is here. Thank you, Alicia. Okay, put your comments and your questions and your jokes. Any of your questions are welcome because, but be careful because I think that Mark may, reverse it and interview you. So I'm glad I have Rob as backup here. Okay, so Mark, I'm going to give a little profile and then you're going to tell me what's true.
Okay.
Mark A. Anderson is the Director of Training with Anderson Investigative Associates, a firm specializing in customized training for investigation and audit professionals. He is a retired special agent with the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General at the Department of Justice, who served as a program manager and special agent, Inspector General, Criminal Investigator. Oh, instructor at the Inspector General Criminal Investigator Academy. That's like a tongue twister, Mark.
Lots of acronyms.
Right. At the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, it's Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. He was responsible for managing the advanced interviewing for Inspector General investigators and interviewing for fraud auditor programs. I got that from Kelly Paxton's podcast show notes because I just saw that. Well, I just heard and saw the post that you were a great dude in fraud on Kelly Paxton's podcast, and I was really enjoying it, watching it. What do you have to say? I noticed that she asked you a question about who, like, your favorite TV investigator was.
Yeah, and I think I stumbled on that a little bit. I don't think about that too much. I think what I mentioned there, and I'd say the same thing here. I always know if I'm looking at some of the people here. Maybe there's people that are old enough that remember Columbo. I love the way Columbo operated. That I'm not too smart. Show me the way is often a good way to draw people out with their information. So I love Columbo from the past. Love the Pink Panther just from a comedic effect. But I'd say in today's TV, there's an interesting juxtaposition if you watch Chicago PD with Hank Voight, the sergeant on there. Interesting dynamic with regard to stuff that Joe Irvin would be interested on the ethics side of, what is right. There's rule of law and then there's right, but where do you walk on that path? And that's what an awful lot of this is, where are you walking down that path and which way do you step as to whether you end up in trouble or not. So I guess that'd be my answer to that one.
So true. I mean, yeah, rule of law and then right. Like every one of us struggles with that on a daily basis, no matter where you go.
As long as we struggle with it, it's okay. It's the
I
people,
like that.
it's the people that don't struggle with it that there's a problem. That don't take the time to say, oh, there's a dichotomy here that I need to address. I need to understand before I take that step, which I think Joe probably talks a lot in her ethics about, thinking about it before you step.
That's
Don't
right.
step first.
That's right. And if you haven't read Joe's Everyday Ethicist, you should, because it is, oh, you have it.
I have it, but I also have about 75 books sitting in front of me. So if I could find it, I would.
Right. And including Robert Barry's and as well as Kelly Paxton's book. I
have to get Robert Barry's book. I was just talking about that last week on Friday Fraudsters. So
Okay, Shri says that, okay, first of all, she's like, what I hear is he is an Inspector Gadget substitute.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Is that a good thing?
Well, what was going through my mind was she's also a Law and Order fan and NCIS and Blue
I
Blood.
watch those. I don't watch NCIS, but I do watch the others. See, I found it. I knew if I looked long enough, I would see it.
Cool. You have an autographed version too.
I do.
I want to know what Joe said to you. What she said to me was like just the sweetest thing, and it like almost made me cry.
Well, she probably doesn't know me quite that well. She said to me, wishing you the best on your ethical journey, Joe.
Nice.
So, yep. So I got that. Good book.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, instead of being like an armchair ethicist, like Joe teaches us how to live it. So Columbo, okay, I'm going to answer that because I was like, oh, I want to answer that question too. So mine would be Sherlock Holmes in that Netflix series, played by, what was his name? Philip Cumberbatch or whatever.
Okay. I don't
You know
know.
what I'm talking about?
I'm not good with names.
Okay, so that one's mine. If you are in the audience, tell us who your favorite TV or book investigator. I have Mark Anderson with us. He is a trainer instructor. He's retired from the DOJ OIG, which sounds so gangster, but it's not. He's OIG, man. Office of the Investigator General.
Inspector General.
Inspector General, sorry.
Inspector. There's the Inspector Gadget, I guess.
Yes. Okay.
Now Shree says I'm Scooby-Doo. I'm not doing well with Shree.
No. She's naming her favorite. Do you have any cookies? Do you have any cookies for him, Shree? Yeah, no, what an honor to have him with me. He was just on Great Woman in Fraud, except he's a great dude in fraud. And I loved how he understood and answered Kelly's question on, do you think it's women who commit more fraud or men? That was awesome answer. To get a hold of that, you need to listen to her podcast. Okay, so I'm going to focus on not the OIG, because I think we all know what the OIG is. But you were once a special agent for the nuclear, the NRC as well. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. U.S. And so as a trade commodity compliance person, I've had some overlap, as in I've had to go to that commission and, call them up or write them a letter or an email and say, I can't remember, but get a license, basically. Get a license for cesium. How did I remember that? Cesium. Yeah.
Being used in an industrial capacity? Was it being used?
Yes, like at a plant.
Okay.
At a probably like a nitrogen or a potash or a fertilizer plant.
Okay. Lots of bureaucracy there, huh?
Yeah. So even the tiniest amount of cesium, you need a license to import or export that stuff.
Yep.
A lot of the trade compliance people in this show will be interested about that. And tell us a little bit more about what you do right now as
in this role, not in nuclear regulatory age. You're talking about what do I do right now?
Right.
I talk on podcasts to people like you.
No, and how did your experience bring you here?
Okay. Well, number one, I'd say the reason that I'm here doing what I'm doing now is because I think the most fascinating part, and I would say this from the investigator side or the audit side, to me, the most fascinating part of my job was interviewing. Uh, I, filling out time cards and car logs and doing arrest warrants and writing sneezing writing, reports and stuff like that. Not particularly fascinating, but the concept of going into the room with somebody that doesn't want to tell you something and getting them to tell you what they have no intention of telling you, that's a challenge. And it's a challenge because it's different every day to every person. So I love interviewing. So I enjoyed interviewing for years in the field. And then when I had the opportunity to move into the behavioral science side and start instructing it and researching it more, I just loved it more. Actually, I regretted not having more training while I was out doing it when I moved into the education side. So I was doing that for the federal government for the last 5 years of my career. It hit that mandatory age where they booted me out. And then I was like, what do I do now? And the decision, well, I thought, it would be nice to keep doing what I was doing. So my wife started a company and allowed me to work for her. And I just do the same training because I think training in this area is fascinating. I think it's really needed. And so that's what I do. So essentially, I'll train. I've trained banks. I did training for Uber. Private sector, government sector, local police departments, federal agencies. Probably do a lot of federal agency training, and I don't have any out of the box program. So I don't say I'm coming in and I'll teach 4 days on this. Whoever my client is, I build the training based on what their needs are. So
I like that.
every program I do is different. Uh, some clients give much more input than other clients do, but
Right.
we build every program out of the box to meet their needs. So,
I like
uh,
that, I like that.
yeah,
That's what I do too, so I'm happy to hear that, someone else out there is doing the same thing. I don't have any out of the box training either. I go in there, I get to know their business, I get to know their
right,
players, and then you know, I build a program for
right,
them. And then I execute in a way that it may not be in a classroom setting. It may be in an interview setting. It may be in a meeting setting, right?
right.
So, Brent Napple, thank you so much for coming. There is inspector generals for most branches. I'm working with one in the Department of the Interior. I've always wondered what the Department of the Interior is. I think I Googled it once, but I immediately forgot.
Department of the Interior oversees an awful lot of the federal lands in the country. So I
Oh,
know there's a Bureau of Indian Affairs, which I believe is a bureau under the Department of the Interior. But I think they have responsibility for lots of federal lands and things like that.
got it, got it. He says we are at the complaint stage presently. I wonder what he means. Can you
I'm not,
elaborate, Brent?
yeah, because I know they have a inspector general that's been around for a while. I'm not sure if this is uh, something within the department or what. Interesting.
Rob says, remind me to never be alone in a room with Mark.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
guess
that's why there's this two-way glass. I got you guys. I got you guys. He's in my room, my studio, virtually, and you guys are on the other side of the glass, making sure he doesn't like make me admit things that I don't want to.
want to admit.
Right. We'll wait for Brent to get back to us on maybe elaborate a little bit on what he means by that. But something interesting I heard, Mark, is that you do training for HR. For
I
HR.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, in this world of, people are having trouble hiring, their, candidate selection time is, like, longer than ever before, like, 6 months to hire someone? I wanna know, like, what kinda interview techniques or what kinda questions, like.
Well, the other thing we're seeing with the HR side, the stuff I've been reading recently, is because of the lack of applicants for jobs, qualifications for applicants are diminishing, and people are getting employees on board that don't meet those minimum levels because they're just trying to replace bodies. So you got an issue there. You got the issue with why is it taking so long to get hired, which is excused off as a lot of stuff is. Some of it's legitimate, but the pandemic, has created this. Well, people aren't in the office, they aren't doing the work as quick, whatever. But that certainly delayed it. But now what we're seeing, and this is across the board, the place I was reading some recent articles on it was in law enforcement, with people that are being hired for positions that shouldn't be getting hired for those positions. And then you wonder why down the road you have issues with them. So we have to,
Ooh,
yeah, it's a nightmare. And we don't think the long game. We don't think the mission. We think, let's take care of our statistics. Let's do what we need to do today. And those things bite us in the backside down the road. So we need to be much better trained at how do we hire that right applicant. Now, think about it.
right.
If you have an applicant who isn't qualified or has stuff they want to hide,
Mhm.
do you not want to determine that while you're in the application process before you bring
Front
them on
end.
board? Yeah. And you say, yeah, but we're human resources. We're just trying to bring people in. Well, we need to be smart in who we bring in. Look at the stuff we talk about on Friday Fraudsters, the
Mhm,
embezzlement after embezzlement after
mhm.
embezzlement. And
Never a shortage.
no, and we talk about internal controls and the things we need to have to keep those embezzlement from happening. Wouldn't it be even a better step never to hire the embezzler?
Right.
Because look at the number of embezzlements that happen in companies. And that person had done that at a previous company, but it wasn't determined during the hiring process at the company they're at now.
Right. So, I mean, let's say, what kind of questions am I gonna be asked in
Well,
interview to determine, like, because I'm like, I'm pretty much a criminal. I don't know if you knew that about me, but,
you
um,
hide it well.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, you're good at it.
I'm so good at it.
I think some of the things we have to ask, we're not necessarily, it's not like if we say, did you embezzle from your previous company, the person's going to say yes. So
No,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? So we have to be a little more creative in what we're doing. One thing I want to determine is, do I have a truth teller in front of me, or do I have a fabricator in front of me? And if I start determining that legitimately, if I determine this person has lied to me 4 or 5 times in a job interview, do I want to hire them? Because this is their best day.
Right.
So
Hey,
if
why don't
this,
we just hook people onto polygraphs for interviews?
well, some companies do. I mean, I
Oh,
just think,
right.
so I think it depends on where you work. There's an expense to that. Polygraphs have, I'm not real highly confident of them at sometimes. I think we need to ask better questions. And
Okay.
this is right up Robert's alley,
Absolutely.
right? Uh
Um,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna do a little plug for Rob,
Do that.
is that he has a book called Ask Better Questions. And I mean, it's mostly aimed towards the auditor field, but anyone can benefit. Like, I'm a compliance person. I need to ask better questions. HR people, anybody. And I want to hear about you, though, like a response versus an answer, Mark.
Oh,
Tell me a little bit more
yeah.
about that. Like, when
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking
let
you
me
a question.
yeah, when you're asking a question of me. So
Mhm.
what might you ask me if you're in a situation and you have a question to ask me, I'm interviewing you, what might you ask?
Am I going to be? am I going to be, am I going to lose my job over this?
Okay. And that's a question that anybody who's in the audit or investigation field has been asked before, most
Right.
likely multiple times. So
Right.
we should have our answer for that question before, or our response to that question before we even hear that question, because the response is going to be the same. We're just going to change names. We're going to change the circumstance because the response is always the same. The person, we have to consider, why does the person ask the question?
Well, they're scared.
There's okay, so excellent. One of the things we have to keep in mind when we're doing these is fear. Where's that level of fear and what's that causing the answer? It's also probably because they're tired of answering questions. So they're going to ask you a question. So what they've done in asking that question is they've shifted the burden from themselves to the interviewer, to me. You shifted your burden to me by saying, what's going to, am I going to lose my job? Now, if I answered that question, I would say to you, Benita, I'm here today to talk to you, but I don't know what's going to happen down the road. I don't know what action they're going to take against you. I don't know if they're going to refer this to law enforcement. I don't know what's going to happen. So when I give you that answer, does that provide any incentive for you to talk more to me? Does it encourage you in any way? Because go ahead.
It hasn't answered my question.
Okay. And it's a legitimate question, but I can't provide a legitimate answer because that's beyond my ability to control that. That's outside of my ability to control. So, and when I do that, I actually take power and authority away from me. I sat in an interview once where the interviewee kept asking questions, and the interviewer kept saying, I can't tell you that. I don't know what's going to happen. That's up to somebody else. And the interviewee finally said, could you get somebody else in here? You don't seem to know anything.
Right. Get somebody that has the authority to talk
the
to me
authority.
then.
But
right.
The person with the authority for that answer isn't going to do the interview.
No.
So that would be my answer to you. If I responded to you, this is what I'd say.
Okay.
Hey, Benita, that is a great question. I can understand why you asked it in the situation that you're in now. I want you to understand I came here today to give you the opportunity to tell your side of the story. I can't predict the future any more than you can, because if I could, I would have probably bought a lottery ticket and I'd be on a beach down in the Caribbean, and you probably wouldn't be in this seat either. So neither one of us have the ability to do that. But I'm telling you this, by me coming here today and giving you the opportunity to talk, there's nothing more important at this point than you telling your side of the story. You don't want to be standing on the platform when the train pulls out with regard to this decision. You want to be on that train. I'm giving you a chance to be on that train. So tell me, and I'm back to the question. So that's a response. That is not an answer. It doesn't really answer your question, but in most cases that response.
But it made me feel better. It made me feel like, oh, this Mark guy, he's just a guy
here
like
with
me. Yeah,
right.
He's a guy like me.
And then that facilitates a return to the present. So this is what I want you to think of. And you can use this across the board. This is not Robert's book might be for auditors, but that question stuff, like you said, is for anybody. Mm-hmm. My stuff on questions may be for investigators, but auditors can use it. Anybody can use it. You use it when you go to a restaurant to order. You don't go to a restaurant and say, is a meatloaf good? Because nobody in the restaurant's going to say, no, it sucks. They're going to say, yeah, it's good. So we want to ask questions better to get more information, use it as parents, whatever. So we can ask those questions better and get responses. We want to, and this is what I want you to think of. That question you just asked me is the same as all these questions. It is a future-based question. So if you're doing an interview and somebody asks you a future-based question, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to go to jail? Do you have to tell my family? Who's going to know about this? All those are future-based questions beyond our interaction today, you and me. If it's a future-based question and it shifts responsibility to me, as soon as I hear that, I know my response needs to be a present-based response that shifts the responsibility back to you.
Right. And you did that in saying that,
Now is the moment.
yeah, now is the moment for you
Right.
to share your story. And
And I'm here with you.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
That's
that's
comforting. That's
yeah.
comforting.
So that's a response versus an answer. And what I call the time thing is a time responsibility continuum. Taking it from the future, bring it to the present, take it from you responsible, make them responsible.
Right, right. Um, yeah, no, and you're right. It's across the board. I mean, so is, neuroscience and behavioral science, which is something that you actually got into as well. Um, Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, how did that come to be, and why do you think it's needed? Like, I think I'm like pushing the question. Like, I'm just like having you reinforce my thoughts, but
What's your thought on it as to why it's important?
yeah, like I think like Rob, and Rob's always saying it as well, is that you know everybody needs to be a little bit neuroscience savvy in marketing, in audit, in compliance, in sales, in procurement,
Right.
in supplier. Like I can't name one person that shouldn't oh, executive coaches, any kind
Yeah.
of coaches.
Darn, I was just looking for another book I wanted to show you too. It is absolutely essential, and if we become so blinded to that and focus, we want to focus in our little niche. But man, if you're interacting with human beings, other people, and you don't aren't concerned about the neuroscience or the behavioral science, you're not going to be as successful as if you are. If you don't consider what is the fear of that person. We walk into an awful lot of these interactions and we think we have the corner on the market. And and
Mm-hmm.
and the way I interpret it is the best. And we don't seek, this goes to an old Stephen Covey one, we need to seek to understand. Uh,
Right. Oh,
and
it's like you've done a background check on me. And
Well, which very interesting you say that, because that's another area that's deficient in this interviewing realm that we need to get better at, which is planning. We plan for the interview, but we don't plan for the person. We need to spend as much time planning for the person. If I'm coming to interview you about something you did, I need to know what you did, but I need to know who you are. What are your fears? What is your Achilles heel? What's going on in your life? Because if I can better understand that, I can better relate to you, so that you do sit there and you say to me, oh, you know what? It's okay. He understands me. He's been through this. That's the most
yeah,
effective way to get information out of people.
seek to understand. Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey was my first business or self development, or what's his genre?
I would say that would be yeah, business growth. It is a self develop. It's like a kind of combination there. It's going to
Right.
make you a better person, but it's going to make you more effective in whatever you do.
Right. So that's my first business book.
Okay.
Audience members, drop your first business book. Let's see the variety of answers that come up. What was your first business or self-development book, Mark?
Oh my goodness, that would go back. You do realize I'm kind of old, so that would go really far back. Probably it was while I was living and the Bible was written.
Well, yeah,
Maybe not
the
that far back.
Bible. Yeah, no, that is a very good reference book.
It it is an absolutely excellent one. When you talk about the
Yeah,
subject of ethics, a lot of people don't
right?
know this.
Yeah,
The subject of ethics, the book of Job is like a study
Job.
in the subject of
Yes.
ethics. So
Mhm.
there's a lot you can get from that. What would be the first business book way back?
I have
Who would
where
it
to
have been?
find
I
it
don't
in the
know.
Bible right here.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Should I go to ethics?
Ethics probably is going to give you a couple references to Job for
Oh,
sure.
for sure. Let's see. I'm just curious now. ethics. It's like I don't know how to spell or something. Shouldn't it be between eternal life and F? Oh no,
ETH.
EH. There's it goes from eternal life to eviction.
No, that's not very complete there.
I know, like what the? I got this from a gas station in Texas, a Buc-ee's.
Oh, those are a unique gas station. Let me grab a buck here.
Okay, this is really fun, guys. Thanks for joining us and tuning in to Benita Speaks Customese, but she also speaks to Mark Anderson today. He is a he is a trainer, but I mean he is a fraud investigator for sure. Like we just heard him on Kelly's podcast, Kelly Paxton's Great Dudes in Fraud. And then he's been on Friday Fraudsters, which is how I got to know of him. And then we had a conversation last month and booked up this conversation. And am I ever glad and honored and privileged that he's spending some time with us. Okay, what's this book?
Okay, the first one I want to say is the one I can't find on my shelf, which I'm going to have to find it. I don't know if I loaned it to somebody. Influence, The Art of Persuasion. It's by Robert Cialdini, and I'm sure some people have heard of him. I was talking to somebody the other day about it, and they said, oh, yeah, I love that book. He's a business and marketing guy. He was a professor at a college down in the outside of Philadelphia. Probably one of the best books. I pulled so much material out of there. It's business and marketing, persuading people to buy what you want. Fascinating book. Great for the stuff we're talking about. This one goes to what you were just talking about before, The Gift of Fear. I don't know if you ever heard that. It's by a guy named Gavin DeBecker. He runs a personal protection security organization, but excellent book on the concept of fear. And
I might need that. I might need that because, like, lately I've been wondering, how do I instill fear for bad actors in my social media network?
Oh, are you talking about the events of the last week?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is talking a little bit about what your response is, because part of what you experienced in this last week was fear.
Ah, got it.
So
Yeah.
if we need to have a healthy response to fear too.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to understand the fear of that person sitting across from us. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to let everyone know that I've been hacked on Instagram. So if you are following me and we've been direct messaging in Instagram, please delete, block, or report, because that's not me in there asking you for favors and asking you to invest and stuff like that. Today, I got a message from a small business owner that got hacked as a result of my that person that hacked me, that took over my account. So now I'm like, my fear level like just went boom. And that's why I feel the need to say this. I feel the need to say this because there are other small businesses that were direct messaging me on that Instagram account. So please be careful, folks, and block, delete, report.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, like, yeah. Tell me from, or not tell me. What is your take on like how I should respond? Like, besides like losing sleep and
well, I mean, a lot of that stuff is perspective. As far as the stuff that you felt this past week, you've lost sleep, you've been anxious. It's probably taking your concentration away from things that you needed to be focused on this week. those are normal responses. I think what we have to do is just understand them, then based on our understanding, try to move ourselves in a different direction from where we're at. That's the same thing we're talking about in an interview room. If I can understand that person's fear that's sitting across from me and verbalize that fear to them, verbalize their,
Right.
you're basically saying at that point, I understand you. And if you can do it
Mhm.
in a story where you indicate, I've felt this before, you've now created that situation where you look at that person. They say people like to talk to people like themselves. So if you
Yep.
can portray yourself as the person that you're talking to, and obviously we're not talking imitation here, but if we can portray ourselves that way, that person feels more close to us and they're going to reveal more to us. So what do we deal with that fear? Number one, you got to step away from it and recognize you had no ability to control it. You know, you look at that situation and we're outraged by that situation that
No,
took place.
I wasn't targeted,
No.
but these criminal organizations are sophisticated and they are have an abundance of resources. And it is of my belief that they use Instagram analytics or social media analytics for bad. So the same way that we can use social media analytics to see gender, to see whatchamacallit, demographics,
Mm-hmm.
location, all of that, the criminals also use that. So
And sometimes more effectively than we do.
right,
But
probably more effectively.
I think when we talk about that situation of fear, to look at that and what our responses are to it. Look at the situation that took place this past weekend outside of Buffalo, New York, with that guy going into
Tell
that,
me all.
going into that market and shooting people. Did he actually target the people in that market? No, he didn't target them individually. He targeted the environment that they were in, the demographics of the environment. Uh, did he target individuals? No, he didn't know any of the individuals. Do we allow fear to take hold and say, okay, I'm never going to a Tops market ever again because this situation could happen? You know, we have to have a
Right,
healthy response to these things. And we
right.
can't stop living, stop existing because of things that happen around us, because those things are all going to happen. Then we have to have something bigger to turn to, and
Absolutely, absolutely.
whatever that is for you or anybody that's listening, we have to have something more eternal than what's going on here.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone here has ever been hacked. I've never been hacked. I've been on social media for since 2005 or maybe even earlier. I don't know. But since the advent of social media practically. And this has never happened to me. My and then in my blaming stage, I was like, Instagram and Facebook and Meta should have better controls and better ways of vetting bad actors and better ways of sweeping through the system and getting rid of them. And now I'm like, oh, I'm boycotting Instagram and Facebook and all Meta products. I'm doing a phased shutdown of all of those products. I don't know if that's healthy, but I think it might be. Like I don't know. I'm still processing, right, Mark?
Well, yeah, and you need to do that over a period of time, because you've probably benefited greatly from having access to those platforms. And we have to realize that anything we have access to, there can be a negative connotation with it. I mean, look at all what took place after September 11th, 2001. We wanted security. We wanted to be assured that there would be no violations in the transportation system ever again. So they imparted all sorts of rules with regard to that. And then what do? We got
Department of
ticked
Homeland
off.
Security.
Yeah, but then when they put all those things in, it slowed everything down. We got ticked off that our freedoms were being impinged upon.
Right.
So there's always the pendulum swinging, and your pendulum is just swung really far one way there. You might want to come back a little bit.
Yeah, no. And that's what I'm doing. I'm thinking pros and cons, pros and cons. Well, I communicate with my family on Facebook. I'm like, well, I can communicate with them on WhatsApp, but I'm going to be missing out on the pictures of the babies and the dogs and the family goings ons. Yeah, so I'm going through that pros and cons list. Peter laughs at my phased shutdown terminology because he is a shutdown, turnaround, outages manager and project planner. So yeah, like Peter, all of this stuff is totally interchangeable across all industries, really, like interviewing, planning. Like Mark says, talks about planning. Like, let's hear Mark talk about what kind of planning should you do before an interview.
Well, here's the statistic on the planning thing that I base a lot of this off of, and just watching interviews over time. Research studies done in the United States, Canada, and Western Europe in the white collar crime fraud arena. So not necessarily just law enforcement, but agencies that look at those type of issues. They say that less than 1 in 10 interviews have adequate planning. And I would absolutely agree with it, because we do the planning. We do the planning as to what we're there for and who we're going to talk to. I don't think we spend probably enough time planning and strategizing questions to ask. And I know we don't spend enough time figuring out, who am I going to speak to? Who am I going to speak to? Who is Benita Lee? From whence does she come and who is she now? Because the better I understand that, the more effective I'm going to be. And if I do that planning before the interview and I still am not satisfied, the first long time in that interview is going to be rapport with you to try to fill in those blocks. I did an interview with a guy I had done tons of research on, very odd duck. That I was investigating for something. When I went to interview him the first time, the first 2 hours of the interview was just rapport.
Wow.
First 2 hours was just to, who is he? What makes him up? Where's his decision-making process comes to? What's important to him?
Yeah, but we don't have time in a HR interview for 2 hours. Like,
why?
What if you're interviewing
on the street?
What if you're a tax guy or a legal guy?
Well, how important is it? Number one, that's part of the planning process. You need to, in the part of that planning process, obviously, if I'm going to see you to pick up some records that you have for the investigation I have, I don't have to do a whole lot of planning. I probably should do a little bit, but I don't have to do as much. The question we have to ask ourselves as part of this planning process is, how important are the results of this interview?
Right.
Do I need to know what happened from this interview? Do I have other evidence or information that paints what's going on here, and I don't need this information, or do I need this information? If I don't have that, then the question becomes, does this person know? Did this person execute? Is he the one that developed this violation, this ethical violation, or this embezzlement? How much do I need to know about that to fix my systems? We need to figure that out. And if it's very important, then why are we putting time limits on it?
Right. Yeah, Peter, you should connect with Mark here. Mark Anderson. Ask me after the show if you didn't get his information. Wow, interviews fail at an even higher rate than turnarounds. And turnarounds are planned. We say 70% turnarounds are a fail. Mark seems to be saying that 90% of interviews are a fail.
Yeah, let me provide a little clarification on that, Peter. A good way of putting that, but you still can have success in it. And I'll just use myself. I'll throw myself under the bus here. There's things that I did over my career that I wouldn't have done if I'd had some of the training that I have now. So that's why I kind of have this just very committed to providing training. I'll give you an example. Handling denials. People obviously are going to deny stuff when you accuse them of stuff, right? I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to get denials. Way too often in my interviews, I allow denials to hit the table. And when those denials hit the table, you know what people do when they lie about something? they're going to back that up to the ends of
Right.
the earth. So you're going to have to work a lot harder. So did I still have success in those interviews? Yes, but I probably missed lunch and I was probably there for much longer than I needed to be.
So
Same thing.
don't let denials hit the table.
Don't hit denials at let denials hit the table. So
Okay.
with regard to what Peter said, even though I didn't do enough planning in some of my interviews, I probably got to where I needed to be eventually. But here's the thing: the longer you're in a room and the more you say in an interview, it's the likeliness of you making a mistake in what you say increases. If you make a mistake, that person you're talking to is going to focus on the mistake, not focus on what you're there about. Because what are they trying to do? Shift responsibility, get rid of their fear, and they're going to shift it. So some of those interviews probably had success, but Peter's probably right. Did they miss information? Yes. Did they get everything they should have gotten? No. Are there shortcomings with regard to it? Yes. But I don't think they all failed. I think probably they got a D instead of a B on their report card.
Okay. Yeah, no, that gives us a better idea. Instead of a B on the interview, they got a D.
Right.
So Mark is the director of training with Anderson Investigative Associates, a firm specializing in customized training for investigation and audit professionals. He's a retired special agent, and he's just an awesome conversationalist. It's probably because he's had some training in rapport building, because every conversation I have with this guy, I just have so much fun and I learn. If you want to connect with Mark, he can be found on LinkedIn. He also has a business page that is an offshoot of his LinkedIn called Anderson Investigative Associates. Where else can we get a hold of you, Mark?
And I have a lot of free material out there too. If you find this stuff
I know.
interesting
I
at
was
all,
going through it on YouTube and
yeah.
liking it all. Peter, you would enjoy all that, because I go through Peter's YouTube as well, and I like it all. It's all training, and as you know, Peter, I have this thirst for knowledge. Some of it is useful, but I find that it becomes useful in the future, not at the time that I'm learning it. So, I'm one of those people, I need to cover all my bases. So I learn a little bit about everything, and that's what this show is about. I speak customese, but there's people that speak investigamese. Fraudies. Shut down, turnaround, outages. I don't know. There's so many iterations to what we can do with that. I feel like we live in our echo chambers and in our silos. And this show is about coming together from multidisciplines and talking about those points where, we have similarities, where we can use skill sets learned from other disciplines to implement in our own. And I hope you got that out of today. There's just one question that I've started asking. Did you have some last words? I feel like you had took a little breath there.
No, I've been told it's important to breathe once in a while, so I tried to fit one in.
Yeah, if you I've been asking everybody this question, and so Peter's heard it before, but I'm painting an imaginary picture, and I want to know what you're going to do. So it's like somebody shoots down satellites, and all of a sudden we're unable to get onto the internet. We have no internet. We have no TV. We don't even have radio, Mark. So there's no communication devices left on Earth. Like, I'm not talking about survival, but what are you going to do now? Like, what's your form of entertainment? What's your form of news? What's your form of, you know what I mean?
Yep. Well, I'll tell you my first thought is we'd get to know our neighbors
Yeah.
and we'd build community.
Right.
And we would be in a lot better shape with all those things that we're going to lose right now if we had kept those things. So I think we've lost a lot by having those things and not knowing our neighbors and not being our brother's keepers, and not investing in the community in which we were living. Because if we were all doing that, we would all have excellent communities. So I would
Right.
probably be doing that. And what I'd be doing with my spare time is when you invest in your community, you would find out there's a lot of needs that you could fill that didn't involve being on your iPad.
I
And
love that. I love that. There you go, folks. You have it from Mark Anderson. Know your neighbors, invest in your community, help others. And in doing so, you help yourself.
oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Kate, well, this has been a great session. I learned. It was live. Um, if I can keep you just for a minute, Mark, when we
Okay.
say goodbye to the audience, I would love to just chat for a few minutes. If anyone else has a question or doesn't know how to get a hold of Mark, let me know. I'm going to spin his or scroll his LinkedIn page underneath here. He is at Mark A. Anderson. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. If you are watching this on the replay, let us know you're on the replay and ask us some good questions. We can still answer them even though you've asked them later. Bye now.